Hello and welcome to another episode of Time Extend. My name is Adam Ismail, and joining me for this very important episode, as always, is
Brendan Rorison, and sadly, Adam, we aren't joined by Kazunori Yamauchi. Unfortunately, I did make a tweet earlier that might have alluded to that fact, but it's just us TX boys back again, and what an occasion it is, mate. This is probably the biggest podcast we've recorded in terms of how monumental it is for the racing game, the racing genre. It's Gran Turismo 7, baby. That's all we can say.
Yeah, God, what if we had Kaz on? I mean, I feel like if he knew anything about us, he would take issue with various things that we've said about his projects, but I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I would maybe be speechless. I have on one occasion met the man, and it was at the New York event in 2019, and I was mostly speechless. I just thanked him and shook his hand and just kind of smiled vacantly, and it's like the only time in my life where that's ever happened.
Mate, I don't even know how I would act around like a guy like that, because he's not like your typical celebrity, so it's not that way where you can have a standard celebrity reaction, and he's very much a kind of cult hero for a very specific set of fans and a specific kind of hobby. So it's like, what do you say that doesn't make you sound like an idiot, or rather, what do you do? Because obviously, I'm not sure if he actually understands English, or he just chooses to speak Japanese, but
I think he understands a good amount. You can even see it in interviews. Like he'll like nod, like he seems to get it before his interpreter relays it to him. And also, like, I have to credit Jordan of GT Planet for introducing me to him, because there's no way I would have approached the man if I didn't have Jordan there, and he was just like, hey, Kazunori, I want you to meet somebody. And so very thankful to for so many things. Jordan is a great guy, but also for that, I have a great picture. I got a great picture out of it. I got that picture, and I also got me and Takuma Miyazono, one of the many people who is in Gran Turismo 7. After I completely binned it and threw away our race, I'm still apologetic to Miyazono for that. I hope he forgives me if he remembers this at all, but that's where we stand.
I bet he was so well-mannered about it as well, though. Like, after the fact, he was probably like, it doesn't matter. Or was there a bit of a battle between you guys after that?
I'll never forget that right before we did the race, because we had an interpreter as well, and I was talking to Takuma through the interpreter, and I guess he asked me if I had any questions for him, and I said, what tire do you not want to use? And he said, the hard one. And my response was just, okay, so I will use the hard one. That was it. That was like all the preparation we did before the race. I was just like, just tell me what lap I need to pit on, the most soonest available one, and tell me what tire I need to use so you can do your work. And we still didn't do well, but you know, I gave him a good hole for us to dig ourselves out of. So, you know, maybe that was like one of the inspiring, you know, moments that propelled him to his 2020 World Championship victory. We'll never know.
It could be exactly every moment's a learning moment. I mean, the only question I have about that story is, what car did you use, out of curiosity?
God, so I can't remember what car we drove, but it is online. So I will look it up later, just to remind myself. Also, the only commentary I remember was Tom. Everyone knows Tom. Everyone loves Tom. Tom saying that I recovered well from that spin. Because I spun totally unprompted on my own, and I guess kept going, which is the best thing that you can do if you spin a race car.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you've got that little line on your CV as well. Like, Gran Turismo Tom said that I recovered well from that spin. This exemplifies the types of things that I can work with in the workplace. You know, it's a good line.
Right. My mistakes are teachable moments. I don't let them get me down, and that's why I'm here today.
Absolutely, mate. What a tangent to start on, though.
Well, we're not here to talk about my failures at playing these games. We're here to talk about Gran Turismo 7, of course. And it's very funny because right below where I live, there is an Italian restaurant, and right now they're playing country music very loudly, which is something that happens in Pennsylvania. Luckily, the microphone I'm using is so crappy. It's not crappy. It's just like different. It's just like not the best. It's not like the Blue Yeti or whatever. So it doesn't pick up things unless like I'm right up against it. Like you can see where my face is. At least Brendan can, because we're on a Discord call. But yeah, it's a funny thing that kind of happened when we're recording our most important show. But hopefully it won't appear when we go to publish the podcast.
Can't hear a thing, mate. So it's all good on my end at least.
Yeah. So. I think first I want to hear what you have to say, which I know is like a very, how do you start talking about Gran Turismo 7, right? Yeah. But you had said before the show, and I think you said on Discord that like this was going to be a hard one for you to talk about because it's just so many things, encapsulates so many feelings. You seem to be a little bit more embattled about how you feel about the game than maybe I am and maybe other people are. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can try and sum it up. Like you're saying, talking about any Gran Turismo is a challenge. And often when you're talking about the older titles, you can kind of look through it for those nostalgia goggles and talk more about your experiences with the game and like that guide discussion. But the interesting thing is that GT5 and 6, for example, were very kind of clear-cut in that 5 was a bit of a mess at launch, so it was easy to kind of talk about that directly, and the fact that the game didn't quite live up to expectations, whilst enjoyable, still very much unfinished. And 6 felt like what 5 probably should have been if Polyphony had been given a bit more steer. So once again, there isn't really that much to talk about in terms of what those games added to the series outside of a few additions and 5 well, the half-arsed editions, but like you get what I'm saying. Basically, there are a lot of dominating conversation points. What's interesting about Gran Turismo 7, I feel like, is that it's the first Gran Turismo that's really had me completely blown away in quite some time. There's just something about the game when you first boot it up that you genuinely feel it's something special. Like it's the type of game we just don't get that much anymore. I think like when you first boot the game up and it kind of puts you into Music Rally right away, maybe it's just the high off of the Tim Hortons coffee at midnight to get me through that first launch, or maybe I'm just, I don't know, like it's just the vibes off a GT game, but you find yourself like enjoying whatever Music Rally is, and believe us, we don't have enough time on a podcast to try and dissect what that's supposed to be. But like it's just that kind of, it's like the prelude to what's about to come, like when you first boot the game up, and not many games make you feel like that. Like even cinematic games that have kind of prologue chapters and stuff before the title roll, they very much feel as if you're already inside the game. But weirdly enough, like with GT7, it did feel as if that Music Rally thing was good in the sense that it kind of prepared me for the fucking size of this game and the scale of it. And then obviously it's when you watch that intro for the first time, and the Gran Turismo intros do a really good job of making you feel like you've accomplished something by getting to the next iteration. So I can only imagine what it's like for the guys actually developing it, but I don't know if anybody else ever feels the same. But it's like when you see that intro for the first time, it's just such a fantastic feeling. You're like, man, it's another Gran Turismo, it's here.
Yeah.
And oh man, I mean, I suppose just before I go into my in-depth thoughts on the intro side of things, I mean, what were your impressions first?
So, as soon as I saw, because I can't remember, you do Music Rally first, right? And then you get to watch the intro. So, as soon as I realized that the game was forcing me to do Music Rally out of the gate, I just started laughing. I just started, like, howling because I just love the idea that they are so into this for some reason that they're going to force it upon anyone or upon everyone from the word go. Like, that is such a polyphony thing to just be like, this is the experience we want you to have. This is how much we believe in it. And we believe in it so much, we're going to make you do it. And it's this incredibly simple thing, right? It's my issue with Music Rally isn't so much that, like, I don't think there's a place for a mode like that in a game like Gran Turismo. I think it's that it doesn't do anything unique. There's a lot of ways that you could combine music and driving they could have maybe had, and this would have probably been difficult, but something that I remember theorizing early on that turned out completely not to be true at all was that, like, oh, maybe the song will be like dynamic instrumentally, and like the worse you drive or the closer you are to zero, like the instruments will start to like disappear. Kind of like if you've ever played like Lumines or even like Tetris Effect, where like the song will be like composed of things that will enter or fall away depending on the quality of how you're doing. I was like, that could be cool, but that's not how it is. It's literally just like when you run out of beats, the song ends and the game is over. So I did Music Rally and I was laughing, but there was one moment because I'm driving the Porsche 356 and I think I was able to turn some assists off or maybe just traction control or something. And I kind of started to lose it. Like I lose the back end and I was like, that's weird. That is not something I ever experienced in Gran Turismo Sport, like on a low power car like this. And, you know, little did I know that that was a precursor to what I think is one of the more surprising things about Gran Turismo 7 that we talk about a lot in our Discord, and there are a lot of different feelings about it, but I haven't really seen it discussed in more mainstream circles and other outlets. And it's just that, like, this game, it shows you, it presents a very forgiving, very introductory, very, for lack of a better word, like kind of coddling presentation for like the new car enthusiast, the new car lover. And then it just fucking hits you with these physics that are like, they're tough. For the first time, like Gran Turismo, whether you're using a controller, I would assume a pad. I haven't used a pad, I haven't used a wheel, but I've heard that wheel play isn't much different. But on controller, like you sweat. Like it's tough. It's tougher than any Forza game I've ever played. It's tougher than anything really on console, except for maybe some of those weird ports of like, you know, the old school, like I remember there was like that Race Pro game on the 360. But a lot of the times, like with those games or like with Project Cars, it's more just because they never tune the handling well for pads. And that's usually the problem. It's not that the game is too hard. It's that they never bothered to make it pair well with the controller. But with Polyphony and GT7, you know that they're focusing a lot on the controller, and it has all those DualSense features. It's just naturally like hard to play on the pad, and that was kind of. I don't want to step over the intro because I know you want to talk more about that, but that was the thing that hit me the most when I started playing. I was like, this is surprisingly challenging.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like, because of the murmurs in the hallways about the game being slightly harder kind of trickling out through the preview phase, I kind of didn't have that initial thought of the difficulty because I'd kind of heard it already. I can only imagine being totally blind still the difference it makes, because this ain't your daddy's Gran Turismo in a lot of ways, and I'm somebody who's been very vocal about the fact that GT Sport almost feels like kind of point and go in terms of the way that game handles it. There's very little kind of feedback in terms of the way the tyres react and stuff, in my opinion. It still handles fantastically, but there isn't that kind of bite or kick. I'm not sure if PD took that type of stance personally, because all the bite and kick is now there, and it is evident from Music Rally, so it sets an intense intro even with those slower cars. And just to kind of cap off the thoughts I was going to say about the intro, I just feel as if it's the first kind of GT intro that I've watched for a while where the spirit of GT3 and 4 was in there. Like the way that it takes you on that kind of journey from the very, very early days of motoring right through to the modern era. And it almost feels like it's kind of indicative of Gran Turismo as a series on this 25th anniversary, where you consider how simplistic the game was before and heralded as being top notch, just like the very first motor vehicles would be. And then you've got this all singing, all dancing, ray tracing out the ass, like fucking incredible clips of racing, and Polyphony ham up big time. This is an 8-minute intro or something like that. And there are so many points in the gameplay section, you're like, oh, it's going to end here. And it just keeps going, and then it keeps going. And you know what? Like, I'm glad they did that, because when you watch that GT intro for the first time, like I was saying earlier, it's a special feeling, and we'll only ever get so many of them within our lifetimes. That's the way the development cycles of these games go. So yeah, it felt great. It felt like a genuine Gran Turismo title again. Not that 5 and 6 weren't, but I think it's kind of unanimously agreed that the PS3 era maybe introduced a dip. Sport was fantastic for a more focused game, but right from the off, you just get the vibe that this is a proper Gran Turismo experience.
Yeah, the whole history of the car, they've done that before in like different ways. I think something that I think is kind of funny to reflect on is like when GT Sport came out, I thought it finally marked the end of like self-indulgent polyphony, where they were gonna do the 7-minute intro, where they were gonna show you all of the extraneous stuff that didn't really have to do with cars. But no, it's alive and well, and you could say that GT7 is proof that it is stronger than ever. I think that GT7, and I mean obviously GT7 is a sequel of the games before it, but GT7 feels like such a development, such a kinship with 5, more so than 6. In some ways, I think that it's 6 done better because it tries to go for like a simpler, sort of more gamey approach to the campaign, but the difference is 6 did that and had like no soul, like no thought to it, and 7 does it in this way that's much more like, let's tell you about the cars. Let's this is an amazing, like the Pokemon post you did with Professor Oak is so it's so funny, but it's so true because that's the way that Gran Turismo 7 introduces the world of cars to you.
Yeah.
And 5 I think tried to do that, but the problem with 5 is that it had no idea what the fuck it wanted to be. It was all over the place, and it spent too long in development, but also wasn't as finished as it nearly should have been for the amount of time that they spent on it. If you are a member of our Discord, you've no doubt seen the posts in the Gran Turismo sub-channel about, like, here's GT5 like a month before it came out. Half the menus aren't there, and, this is the game that they were working with. But GT Sport finally feels like they have captured that idea of like the racing sim, the driving sim in the wider context of the world, and is more of a thing to corral, up and coming like kids, new fans, new motorsport people. And I end up like, I know that like some will, discount like the cafe as a gimmick and all that stuff, and like the intro is emblematic of that too, but I think that, I don't know, it speaks to me because, as I'm sure you agree, and a lot of people who are probably listening to this, like, I remember when I was a kid and I played Gran Turismo for the first time. And it's funny thinking about, like, the experience I would have now if I was a little kid and GT7 was my first Gran Turismo versus the one I know I had when I was playing GT1 and GT2.
Yeah.
It just, it's something that I can't even really put into words, but it's sort of humbling in a way. It just gives you like a warm thought about like, this series has been around for so long and has meant so many things to so many people. And what they've produced is, I think, a great game. It's instantly one of my favorite Gran Turismos, but it's also well geared to be an introduction for the next generation of fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And the menu system, like you were talking about, Adam, is a great way to bring people into the foray of car culture. At the end of the day, we talk about how much Gran Turismo influenced that and how much of it was through kind of natural progression through the game and getting the chance to drive cars and the like, but very rarely did those games ever have a way of actually saying, you know what, here is the story of cars and here's how it goes. And people have different views on how this should go. That you get the elitists, it's like, you should seek out this information if you want it and build up from the foundations anything provides you. But like, let's not beat around the bush here. Like, Kaz has always been very upfront about the fact that Gran Turismo is about the cars. Like that is the star of the show here. Like that is why we're playing the game. Why not have something like the menu system in place? Obviously, it being the kind of guiding full focus on the single player was something that maybe wasn't readily apparent before launch. But because they interlace kind of championships in there and some genuinely difficult races, I don't have an issue with the menus being the bulk of the game. It really, the only kind of concern with the menu system is that in terms of the actual races themselves, they're still heavily dictated by the old Chase the Rabbit stuff. But
yeah.
that's something that Polyphony are obviously set on, because they have races in here that are actually difficult, and they're grid starts, and they're exciting and they're great fun. But for whatever reason, they obviously feel that's the best showcase of let's keep the cars the stars. I'm not sure if it's this. It's almost like a parade, isn't it? Every race is like a parade of seeing the vehicles on offer, that sort of thing. Being honest, in other racing games, I'm very rarely paying attention to what's around me because I'm focused on the race, whereas I think Gran Turismo probably goes for this Chase the Rabbit type stuff, because you get that showcase of what the game has to offer, and you see what cars you're up against because you're in a certain menu. The UI now has that little feature on the side as well, where when you pass a car, it comes up what car you've just passed.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like a evolution in a way of the old when you went through a checkpoint that said how far ahead you were of somebody, and you get the tiny little thumbnail beside.
It's a little thing. It's a little thing, but it encapsulates so much of why this game is weird and different. Like, no other game is gonna do that. Like, no. Okay, it'll present maybe like a thumbnail of the car and the time, but it would never just like, it literally just shows up the full name of the car, and a huge picture of it takes up like a bigger chunk of the UI than you would expect it to. And it's just so funny to me that they did that. They just, every opportunity that they can to teach you about what's in the game, they take it. And it's just funny because no one else really does that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why, like, truth be told, one of the things I find really frustrating, and as I get to the final few menu chapters, is this format of race. But like you were saying about that being a teaching tool almost of the cars in the game, and what car is from who, manufacturer wise, and that sort of thing. I do feel as if for the purposes of guiding the game around this menu system, the Chase the Rabbit system makes more sense. It means that you've got a good 18 hours of menu content to get through, and you will have to get through it ultimately. That it's a good core of the game. But when I made my peace with that idea, that I think Polyphony's in this odd spot where they know they have a fantastic base for competitive racing, and they're more than happy to harness it for online play, but they still feel as if from a single player game design perspective, the Chase the Rabbit element allows them to have a bit more freedom and I don't know, just kind of guide the races towards a higher level of player or lower level of player. Because the thing about grid starts is the cars are either fast or they aren't. And that's the way every kind of game is. Like I was playing Grid Legends just before playing GT7, and that was a game where, even on Legend difficulty, it felt a bit kind of slow in terms of the opponents around you and stuff. They were hyper aggressive, but once you got past them, they get involved in the wars and you just kind of shot off into the distance, and it's just a get it over the line. It feels like Polyphony feel like at least this system means that it might not be the most exciting racing in the world, but it will definitely be one that kind of takes you to the last half of the last lap each time, which is, it's not exactly dynamic, but it still means that you know you've got an objective to go. And in some of these races and tournaments, it can get pretty tetchy, especially when there's like PP limits and stuff.
I think I think they want to give you kind of like the space to understand how these cars handle maybe differently, get to grips with the car that you have, understand more of your garage. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's the way to go. I think that maybe there was a way that they could have blended it where they started out with more of the rolling starts, and then, you know, maybe around like the 5th menu chapter, the 7th menu chapter, really start easing you into those like more authentic grid starts. Probably would have been the way to go. I don't like the Catch a Rabbit stuff either. I think it, again, it's a way to do it, but it doesn't have to be the only way. And for whatever reason, Polyphony believes it is the only way. But I think that they also kind of, because they're courting that crowd of like, you know, we want to really excite people who are new to the world of cars and racing and teach them things. I think they're just really focused on this slow, like giving people a place to kind of play around with cars, understand the vehicle dynamics, and get more comfortable with it. Because let's be honest, if you're trying to race aggressively and you're also trying to do that, yes, I know that, many of us played games growing up where it was just hard and it didn't, teach you a different way earlier on, so it could kind of coddle you. It just threw you right into the shark tank. But these days with modern games, we're able to try different approaches, and that's the approach that they've decided to go with. I just wish, I was really happy when I saw those more difficult events marked with the pepper icons and stuff. I thought that was a cool thing, that a nod that they were giving to more advanced players or people who've been playing for a long time. Those events are there partially because anyone who pre-ordered the collector's edition or got the collector's edition or whatever, you get the Castrol Tom Supra, you get that RX GT3, the Mazda, but you have no place to race these cars. So it's trying to kind of give you something to do with that content, and also if you get all that money that comes with the pricier version of the game. Yeah. But I wish that they had more of them, frankly. I think that this game just needs more of them. And I think they will add to them, definitely, in a GT Sports style post-release updates. They'll bring in more of those events, which will be really cool. And maybe, we'll look down the line, and this will be another case, as has been with so many games, including GT Sport, Drive Club, you name it, where, the Spec 2.0 version, a couple patches down the line, this game's going to be better suited to fulfill the needs of more advanced players as well as the newcomers. I feel like that's probably going to happen. That's usually how these things go anyway. Yeah,
exactly. That's it. And at this point, it was funny when I was at the kind of 10-15 hour playtime mark, I was getting frustrated about the fact that there wasn't these standard races and stuff. But then I take a step back and I realise that ultimately, for me, Gran Turismo has always been a driving game. It's a racing game in terms of what it actually is, but truth be told, I can't really name any instances outside of arcade mode in GT3, for example, where there's been some genuinely good racing on track going on, because there are plenty of games that do that better, but when it comes to the driving experience, especially after 7, everybody's got to step their game up, because the way that Polyphony has made these cars so drivable is that there are so many occasions where you almost feel as if you're just doing the events to try the cars. It's almost like a kind of a live test drive that you're undertaking every time. And listen, that's not going to interest the new era of sim racers or people who are heavily invested in racing specifically. But that's why I was happy to eat humble pie on that point by my own accord, to realise that sometimes you just got to realise when something isn't something else. And for me, Gran Turismo is not really a standard racing game, and that's what makes it so special at the end of the day, because this is a game that through even the new physics improvements that seem to blindside everybody. Kaz did not talk about this at all pre-release pretty much.
Nobody did. Yeah.
This is a different fucking game. This is the thing that a lot of people who've not played GT7 yet will be blown away by. Kaz and PD have created a game that far surpasses what Sport had before it in terms of the driving feel and the games before it. And I say that with both a positive and negative connotation, because Polyphony are not afraid, maybe unlike some other developers, in the sense that they will let you know if a car handles like shit. They won't try and sugarcoat it, and this is what's interesting about Gran Turismo 7 for me. There are genuinely times when I'm driving cars and it's an absolute misery, trying to throw this car around a racetrack in the rain or something, and it's just this is awful.
For me, there was the American Muscle Car Championship. They make you drive or it might have been the Camaro race or something, or the Chevrolet race, but they make you drive an old Camaro, or then they make you drive an old Mustang, and those are horrible. Those are absolutely awful. In some other games, they're kind of fun because they're heavy, they throw their weight around, but you're never really in any trouble, especially in GT Sport. Some cars were wild, but you knew if you were getting yourself into trouble, that was too much throttle. And GT Sport was a really forgiving game at the end of the day, so that fair play. But GT7, that's one of those cars where I'm I never want to get behind the wheel of this thing. And as soon as I move to the next cafe event, I'm not going to. Like, some cars are just generally like bad to drive, and maybe that's fine. There are a lot of games today, maybe every game, that wants every car to be, if not competitive, then at least like somewhat enjoyable or somewhat intuitive, maybe more so than it actually was in real life. And I think it almost comes from that same place as like balancing, like competitive balancing, like in a game like Call of Duty or Battlefield. Like every gun has to offset the positives and negatives of every other gun, and nothing can be too strong. GT7 is not that kind of game. There are cars that just outright suck, and there are cars that are great, and you're going to find the ones you like. And there are people who prefer the more kind of aggressive, bitey physics. There are a number of them in the Discord. You know who you are. And to them, I say, like, great. Like, I'm glad that it gives you more to chew on. I think for someone like me, it was just such a shock for Gran Turismo to kind of take this dive, especially coming out of GT Sport, which was the competitive game, was completely based around competitive play. You would think that they would be trying to weed the pros from everyone else with a more sophisticated, realistic, less forgiving handling model in GT Sport. But what they've actually done is they've held that back until GT7 now, and now we're all kind of dealing with it. So it's one of those things where, that initial 356 drive, the music rally, concerned me, because I was like, how much fun am I actually going to be able to have with this game? But, I think if you initially start playing the game, and, maybe some people here have experienced that as well, but you initially start playing the game, you put, 5, 6, 7 hours in, and you'd be surprised how quickly you start to acclimate yourself to the new physics. You'll never feel maybe 100% confident. Like, Brend, you uploaded that amazing video of you doing the Porsche Cup race, and you were going down the long back straight, the Nürburgring, and taking that kind of that left-hand sweeper, right? And you just completely like ate shit. That's going to happen. I think the thing there is, it's not just that GT7 is hard. It's hard in the way that literally no racing sim I've ever played before has been. Which is that, like, and for, look, I'm not a professional driver. I've obviously been on racetracks and cars going a little bit fast sometimes, but I realize I'm kind of talking out my ass here, but from what I've understood, or what a history of playing these games has taught me, when you are at speed and you're going through a corner, it doesn't require like much lifting or much braking at all, and you can just kind of go along and just dial in like not very heavy steering, just light steering. You put the load on those outside tires, everything's planted. That's never where you're going to run into trouble, right? And that's I think the prevailing idea. But in GT7, the hardest corners are the fastest ones. The fastest ones where you usually don't have to do anything except steer. And like, that's what blows me away. And that's something that still, even though I'm kind of coming to grips with the handling now after having played for 30, 40 hours or whatever, it still bothers me. Because there are just a lot of situations where I just take a corner, like the first turn of Dragon Trail Seaside, and I'm just like, there is no universe in which I should have had no grip, no rear grip, zero. It's weird. I kind of wonder if, the physics aren't exactly where Polyphony would have preferred that they should be, and if, changes to the tire model and whatnot are going to adjust that post-release. It'll be interesting to watch if that evolves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to go full on sim chat here, but Scaff on the GT Planet forums is a fantastic resource in terms of going into detail about how certain physics work, that sort of thing. I believe he's got a background in it in terms of like kind of degree and stuff, so he goes into intense detail, and he was talking a bit about the physics, and it's kind of like when you mentioned the tyre model there, Adam, like that's good intuition based on what he was saying, because basically he feels that the main issue at the moment is that we aren't privy to tyre pressures in this game, for example. So it's like you have the compounds and then we just go with the grip levels basically, like we've always done in Gran Turismo. Racing softs, mega grip.
Yeah.
Comfort softs, trash. But the difference is that it seems like the physics now are at least incorporating that level of kind of heat in the tyres and the way that the tyres are absorbing the tarmac and stuff, because that corner that I ate shit on the Nürburgring, there's like at least 6 or 7 people in the replies posting the exact same thing with varying degrees of power with those cars, because it must just be the way the camber affects the chassis and the way the tyres hit, and it just fucks you right off the track. So his idea was basically that it's something to do with tyre pressures potentially, and that's something that Polyphony will hopefully be able to adjust on their end. But yeah, it's interesting. Like you're saying, I've never played a game where this is the case before, where basically when you feel that oversteer, right, you can catch them at lower speeds, and there are going to be people that tell us that, oh, well, I've caught it at X speed, whatever. But looking at it generally speaking, there are more often times than not when you feel that back end going, and you're reacting to the haptics and you kind of counter steer it, but then the car just goes in the other direction as well,
right.
And then you're like, I'll go to the next one, and it just, you know you're going, but you can't stop it.
The tank slappers are endless in this game, and the race cars are pretty easy to drive, and the road cars are pretty much a handful a lot of the time. I mean, front-wheel drive cars are generally very easy and just a lot of fun because you don't have to worry about with those, and the same kind of goes for the four-wheel drive cars as well. But anything that's rear-wheel drive, especially anything that's mid-engine and rear-wheel drive in the road car, you're looking at trouble. I mean, I feel like I have a sort of an idea of the way that the cars should drive, just having played games that are more realistic than this, that are agreed upon as being more realistic, right? Like iRacing or Assetto Corsa. It's like, I don't think I would have lost it there. I don't think I would have had zero grip in that corner in iRacing, for example, right? Then again, in iRacing, you're driving race cars. So there are a lot of variables here, but and we could talk about it forever. But it's just shocking, and it's not, it's not one of those things I think necessarily like makes the game good or bad. Like I said, I think I'm at a point now where I'm starting to get to grips with it, and I wish certain things were changed, but if anything, it makes the game more interesting to talk about. I think there are genuine criticisms that I have, but I kind of want to hear more from your side, Brendan, because I feel like you've got actually like a couple bones to pick with this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the criticism front, the first foremost point were those physics we discussed. I get what Polyphony are going for in terms of giving each car such individual characteristics, but I feel as if for a game that has previously used the tagline "racing is for everyone," in the last game, coming into this, racing is for fucking no one. If you're driving a 4GT in the rain at the Red Bull Ring,
oh god, the rain! Oh my god, the rain in this game
as well. But like, this is the thing that kind of frustrates me, because for a company with such attention to detail, I've had numerous people give me good advice on, if you use traction control 2 or 1 or whatever that car, it feels great. If that's the way that car's supposed to be driven, there needs to be information in the game that says as much. Like, I get why, if I'm driving a Group 4 car on 0 traction control and no driving aids, it'll carry over into the next car I drive. It feels as if Polyphony are going to go down this hyper, like, character-driven vehicle route, they really need to show what actually illustrates that car's behaviour. Because if the Ford GT drove the way it did, as it did for being that race, then every one of the owners would be dead. It's just like, you just can't fucking drive it in the way that I play, and that's why I'm saying up front, I don't use driving assist aside from S License 10, because that's just fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But
I will jump in real quick and say Andy Hamilton had a really good theory that he expressed to me, because we were kind of texting each other, because he was the only person I knew that was playing the game before release, and I was like, I need to talk to somebody about this, because these physics are gonna fucking blow people away. And he had a really interesting theory, which is that because GT7 allows you to do, I mean, you could couldn't upgrade cars in sport, but you could tune them. But GT7, with the new performance point calculation and what they've done to that tuning menu, they really want people to tinker with cars in GT7. And the theory that he said to me was that the game is harder to handle to encourage players to do that. And I mean, that may well be the case, but if that is the case, my problem with that is this game wastes no breath telling you about the history of the Skyline GTR and how it was dominant in Japanese Grand Touring car racing, but it never explains to a new player what toe is, what camber is, what is the benefit of like a soft springs in the front versus the rear. You know, it doesn't explain those things. Those are things that, you know, if this is the audience you're catering to, you got to explain that shit. I mean, hell, I don't know how the really, you know, I've kind of dabbled with tuning cars in this and Forza over the years, but I'm not even really somebody who really likes to build a car and make it handle great. Frankly, I haven't really had to because it was never an issue in any Gran Turismo before this one. Yeah. So you really need to kind of, I think those are things you need to take the player by the hand and explain. That would definitely go a long way to kind of filling that knowledge gap. Yeah, exactly. And well, we're on that subject as well. If you're going to go down that route of encouraging tuning and the likes, have a way of sharing tuning settings too. Like, give the user, the player, the chance to use different setups to test the car and see what difference it makes as well. Like you said, the menu system pretty much exists for this type of knowledge to be shared, and although there are menu items like go upgrade your car, it's just basically telling you to shove a fucking high RPM turbocharger in it and hope for the best. Like it's not actually teaching you why that might be a bad idea in your EK Civic. Do you know what I mean? Ultimately that's the issue. So I feel as if there's a disparity between the new level of physics and what the games and the series' overall message is. I now feel as if there's a little bit of a divide there, and that's my main criticism really. Okay, for guys like us, we've got a fucking racing game podcast. We talk about racing games all the time. But the fact of the matter is that you can't just be relying on the fact that, new players will be using loads of assists anyway, numbing the feeling of the car. Eventually they're going to want to take the training wheels off and wonder why this 200 grand supercar is absolute trash. Like they're going to want to understand why that might be the case, and I feel as if that's where the game drops the ball in a crucial way. Like I feel as if the theme of Gran Turismo is at odds with this new incredibly detailed approach to the physics that I enjoy, but know that there are so many cars that I'll never drive because I'm terrible at tuning, and I cannot vibe with them at all. And like I was saying at the start, that's fine, not every car drives well, but I feel as if when you're trying to encourage this idea that you must drive these Camaros and stuff, like you've really got to give the player a little bit more options in terms of understanding why that thing handles so different to the other cars. And maybe you could skip the history lessons a little bit on in some of the kind of the menu items and focus on more kind of driving centric information. So that's the main kind of criticism I have. The other stuff I'll run through kind of quite briefly since they aren't as major. I really feel as if that theme disparity has been what's kind of irked me a bit. Second of all, listen, new game in 2022, post-pandemic, we get an incredibly difficult scenario to develop games in, but the online just now just seems as if it's you look at sport being the well-oiled, streamlined racing, it was perfect. The dominance of fucking racing game online. I don't want to hear anybody else say any other games. The fact is, GT Sport's so accessible. They had it down to a T. The online lobby system was obviously very PD, but also very much worked the way it should. Yeah. You take sport over in almost an identical format, but right off the bat, you just kind of ruin it by including tuning right off the bat. And obviously this is all subjective. For me personally, I feel as if a spec series should always have spec cars. You can have tuned events as well, but you launch the game with only tuned events. Once again, maybe going back to that point you were saying Andy was making about getting people to tweak cars and such. But then it's not even that, it's the fucking lobby systems in this game, man. Like you've got multiplayer where you can't change the track after you've made a lobby. You've got these weird, like,
rec rooms in each location in the game,
which I
as
never
well.
see. I don't know if it's like if it's just some kind of glitch on Polyphony's part or the server or whatever, but I never see anyone in those rooms, which I know is impossible. There have to be people in those rooms, but every single room it says 0 out of 16, 0 out of 16 for the meeting places, I guess is what they're called. Yeah.
I found 2 people in the Trial Mountain one on release, but that's like the only time I've ever seen anybody in it. There's a weird disparity here. The UI and UX experience is fantastic, like Gran Turismo, which means there's going to be some kinks in there. Mm-hmm. But the way that the online stuff is all over the shop. Like the way you've got these lobbies at each individual track map location, but you've got
only
some as well.
That's the other funny thing I noticed. Not every track has a meeting place, and I don't understand the rationale for the ones that get it and the ones that don't. Like, Trial Mountain does, and like the Nürburgring does, but like Interlagos doesn't. I don't get it.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, if you look at the world map, and the reason that I noticed this was because having played the game before, there was an update that went live like on March 2nd or March 3rd. And I got the game like a week before that. So, I played a version of the game that is a little bit different than the one that came out. There aren't any massive differences, but there were a couple UI tweaks, and one of them is that the world map now, the game that everyone's played, it gives you like a little icon of like people next to the track name. That wasn't there in the 1.0 release or whatever it was called. So, yeah, that's something I noticed, and I just thought was very strange and didn't really get that.
It's even more strange now. So to top that whole point off, the very haphazard implementation of online, I would have ditched the per track lounges and just made everybody's profile have a lounge like the way you did in GT5. Like, if you really wanted to have that option, that's what I would have went for. But I mean, if you can't change tracks anyway, once you're in a lobby, then maybe it's not that big a deal. They will fix that, of course, and it might even be fixed by the time this podcast goes live. But
I mean, I'm just shocked it's not fixed yet. Like, I saw that the known issues blog that was like posted the day the game went out or the day before the game went live, and I was like, oh, that's. I didn't even really try to play with anyone online because I think there might have been some sessions that the PR people were playing on, but I was just too busy, so I was just going through the single-player experience. Yeah. But I was like, oh, well, they'll have that fixed in a couple of days, and it's been like almost a week now, and I feel like it's kind of too long for a new game to have like lobbies that are semi-broken. Like, they technically work, but no one would want to use them. We're not even doing GT Thursdays right now because we'd have to keep remaking the lobby over and over again, and nobody wants to do that. So
yeah, exactly. So the online implementation at launch is pretty unforgivable, all things considered. That's one of the other bugbears I have. I also feel as if, and it's a point for another time potentially, but you could have really expanded on the idea of sport mode with some sort of kind of overarching semi-campaign structure and stuff in there to encourage people to use it. Menus could have introduced sport mode and gave everybody that level of training you got in sport. Just seems a bit of a disappointment to get rid of that.
It's shocking that they don't explain what sport mode is, pretty much unless you click on it. Like, I don't know. It was such a focal point of GT Sport, obviously, and it was an idea that so many people were skeptical of that, like, I count myself among those who were completely won over by it. Just like, oh, this is actually like me, someone who hates competitive play, hates pressure, actually was like into doing the sport mode races in like 2018 and around that time. And they've not only done a questionable thing by allowing tuning and having those like free form road car races where you just have to fit under like a certain PP limit, but they've also just like not really explained it or shared. Like, you would think for all of the FIA Gran Turismo competitors whose identities and likenesses are in the game, before every cafe race they're talking to you and telling you what car they're driving, which is very cool and very cute. You'd think that one of them would say, like, I got here by doing sport mode. And they never do.
Yeah,
they
that's
never
true,
do.
Actually.
Like, you
they
know,
just refer to themselves as like world champions or whatever.
right,
but,
right. You don't know why, Mikhail Hazal never says, like, the only reason I'm in this game is because I went over to the sport icon and I won a lot, and then I, went all over the world doing it. Yeah, so it's funny how, like, these are things that, like, these are dots that could so easily be connected that they just didn't. And I mean, in a game like Gran Turismo that's as big as GT7 is, I know some things are going to fall by the wayside, but it's just funny to think about.
Yeah, it's a very strange one to fall away, especially when you boot the game up, you've got world map, music rally. Like, why don't you have an option right there for, like, the fucking regulated sport races, like, that you'll have, like, and once again, it's something they can add, but you're just like, I don't understand this. Like, sport was heralded as this massive step forward for console racing, and it's been reduced to a tiny blip on a map that a lot of people won't ever touch because the menus never dabble on it. The Rupert never talks about it. Like, it's yeah. So I mean, for me, that's the kind of the other main criticism. Really, I feel as if the game has the menu system and it uses it in a great way in terms of teaching people the history of cars and such, but in general, the third last criticism is that there's still that weird lack of direction throughout. I feel like the menu system does a great job of making the cars the star, as you would expect, but in terms of introducing the elements of Gran Turismo that make it so special, it's just a little bit too freeform at times even still. And listen, this is a monumentally sized game that, like you were saying, Adam, there are going to be points missed. But some of the things you're just like, this is very strange why they've just pushed that to the side and not even referenced it. They've unlocked it on my map and not even really elaborated on it.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I mean, I agree with both of those things. I think there are just some really weird Polyphony-esque decisions that kind of, it's funny because, again, like, thinking back to sport, I thought that they had, like, sort of worked their way through a lot of this shit, but in reality, sport was just such a streamlined game that didn't really give them the opportunity to fuck up on some of these old game design things, but they're still, fucking up on them. So, like, just like the used car dealership, I wish that it gave you more cars, and I also wish it just switched things out more often. The same goes for the legend car dealership. I mean, you get 5 cars, and it's very slow, and now that I've just completed the cafe, actually as of a couple hours before recording this, there's something interesting that happens where when you go back to the used car dealership for the first time since you've completed the cafe, Andy, I think is the guy's name, shows up and he says that now these will switch daily. And I guess they weren't before because they were trying to give you cars that you would need for the cafe events or something, but there's something that happens once you finish that campaign, and it affects the ways that cars are kind of floated in. There are a lot of cars in this game. The models are beautiful. The rendering is unbelievable. It's the accuracy is second to none. You will not find a bigger advocate for gamification of something like this, for just like a gamey ass fucking racing game. Like, I don't like getting everything off the bat. I don't like being able to just walk up and do everything. I like secrets. And GT7 has a lot of secrets, but I think it almost goes a little bit too hard because, like, you need invitations to buy certain, like, really exclusive cars in Brand Central, and that's a thing that I don't know. I just hope they kind of reconsider down the line because I don't really mind right now that I can't buy a Carrera GT because, there's so many cars in this game I want to drive, and we'll get to a Carrera GT when we get to it. But, like, if months from now, for whatever reason, I don't get that invitation, I don't know how often these are going to go out, but I'm going to be really fucking pissed off because, like, that's like one of the last things in the game that maybe I want to do, or one of the cars that I want to see that I haven't gotten to see yet. So I just wish that they either gave you, if they were going to insist on this very restricted idea with a lot of this content, I wish they either, like, switched things more quickly or gave you a bigger selection. Either would be okay. And I like that there's a used car dealership, and I even thought it was so crazy that, like, the auction, the legendary auction dealership is a Haggerty thing. I thought that was fucking insane. Like, I mean, as someone who works in like automotive journalism, like Haggerty's an institution.
Have you seen the dynamic pricing stuff as well? Really?
I haven't.
Legend dealership?
Yeah, I mean, I see the arrows go up and down, but I actually haven't like noticed them change. I really don't know what the arrows are reflecting.
So basically, the pricing is dynamic based on Haggerty's own index for how much cars are in demand and how much they're going for in real life, and the prices will adjust in the game.
Okay, yeah, I think I recall reading something on that, but yeah, like I think that's really cool. It's also another case of like Gran Turismo kind of melding with real life. I think Haggerty just like bought Radwood or something as of today. I read that. So like just, yeah, it's just stuff like that I love. But, and I think the sort of culture around it and the little things that they do, like with the cafe, for example. I think it's so cool that like automotive designers just show up in the cafe.
Yeah.
That me as like a car nerd, as someone who grew up like wanting to be a car designer for a good chunk of my childhood, it made me so happy when I like showed up with, it was a Sylvia, which is a weird thing, but I showed up with a Sylvia, and Ed Welburn, who is like GM design royalty, like led the design team and everything for decades, like shows up and just starts talking to me about the Sylvia, which is like not even a car I think he worked on because he was at GM. And I just thought that was so cool. I thought that was so cool. I know it's probably not really him. I know he really didn't say those things, but like as a nerd, it's awesome. Yeah. But you can see that they spent a lot of time on that, and they maybe didn't really think through some of the more logistical aspects of the experience, and that maybe could have used a little bit more fine-tuning.
Yeah, I think the idea of the used car dealership is something I've always loved. GT7's implementation of having a used car dealership, invitations, and the legendary cars cycling, that feels a bit too disparate to me in the sense that that's 3 different random roles or perceived random roles that you've got to take tabs on, and if you decide to buy that Alpha and Legend cars and that Carrera GT invitation pops up, you're going to be fucking raging if you've spent all your
or worse yet, if you've been waiting for like an invitation, or you buy a Legend car and then you get like a prize roulette and you get that car, I would be fucking screaming. Because the other thing no one talks about in this game, and I can blame myself for this too because I'll mention it in the review, but you can't sell cars. No. You can't, and that a lot of games are doing that now. Forza's been doing that. Well, I guess with Forza you can, but you can if you want it. So maybe Gran Turismo is worse in that regard. But regardless, like, I kind of hate that because I know the point of this game is to collect cars, but I've never been a car collecting type of person. I like to collect the cars I care about, and I have absolutely zero interest in collecting cars that I don't like. Yeah. And Gran Turismo 7 has a lot of cars I like, but it has way more cars I don't. So
yeah, and if it's about collecting cars, then I still don't see the issue in getting a car and selling it and it still being in your encyclopedia. Like if you want to draw comparisons to Pokemon, like you can get a shitty Pokemon you don't want and get it to fuck when you're done with it, and it's still in your Pokedex. Yeah. Like you still have that option. I'm the same as you in the sense, like, thank you for all these cars menu modes. Probably never going to drive like 30% of them ever again, and they're just going to take up my garage. Yeah, the lack of selling cars is weird, and naturally in 2022 the easy route to go down, which a few outlets and stuff did, is that they're trying to control the economy for the credits and all that sort of stuff. I genuinely just think like it's just a weird trend now where for some reason racing games don't think like selling your car for parts for your favourite cars is not a fun loop. It really is. Like ultimately, yeah, I'd rather have one like crazy Toyota Aqua S than the Aqua S, the Demio, and whatever else. Like at the end of the day, I want to have the cars I want to drive. And that shouldn't mean that I can't enjoy the collector side of it. It should just mean that I control what's in my garage for my benefit instead of just getting rid of cars for no reason. Yeah,
it'd be nice. there's not even really much of an economy that needs to be controlled in this game. I mean, you have to do races, and when the money you get is never like, it's enough to buy parts for maybe whatever car you want, but the cars are very expensive in this game, so you won't have any issue upgrading a car, but you will have an issue buying a car. And it seems like it's pretty firm in that way, so like, I guess they want to prevent people from buying cars. I don't really know. I don't really get it.
Once again, flies in the face of sport mode. I said this in the Discord as well, but it's like, when the Group 4 tournament rolls around, like, you want to have a few cars to choose between. Now that the roulette wheels in the daily marathon can include credits and parts for your car, which obviously leads on to another secret in the way of engine swaps, it, like you're saying, like, it feels like you'll get cars from menu events and stuff because the game mandates you get them. But man, those roulette wheels, I always end up getting fucking $5 grand and stuff from them. Man.
I get terrible shit. You get a 6-star one for doing the final event in the cafe, and I got like the rewards in there weren't great. There was like, it looked like there was a racing camshaft. There was lots of money. One of them was a McLaren VGT, which I got, which I guess is supposed to be a big deal, but to me, honestly, isn't. It's kind of a waste. So the if you were pissed off at getting 2015 Mustang for the 7,000th time in GT Sport, it's not that much better in this game.
Yeah, it's odd. It definitely feels like they've got that part down pat about any cars you buy definitely feel like yours because it's costing you an arm and a leg to get it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the flexibility to buy those cars you want and the means of getting them, a lot more limited perhaps than previous games. You're definitely not going to find any Gran Turismo 4 style easy money cheats in this game. Believe me about that.
Somebody was saying actually one of the dirt events, it's like dirt champion event or something, you get like 100,000 credits if you get, I'm guessing, like a clean race bonus or something. Cool. But those dirt events are wild though. Like it's funny because in terms of handling, they actually feel, in my opinion, better than they've ever felt in the Gran Turismo game before. Yeah. But the gravity is fucked up. Like you take a lot of bad hops in this game and it just shoots you to the moon. It's really weird.
Yeah, you see it on to a lesser extent on the curbs as well, like some of the triangle curbs and stuff. You can get a rough idea of it. But if you go somewhere like Fisherman's Ranch, I think it's S License 6 when it's the GR Yaris on that track, or is that Sardenga? I can't remember. But one of those tracks, and it's like at the very last like straightaway, there's a huge jump. And like it can just fuck you up, and you haven't done anything wrong. It's just that it's decided that you've done it bad, and you can slow down to take it easier. But it's a license test. Like you want to try and maintain your speed as much as possible.
When you're racing against a computer, it's not like they slow down to take it easier, so the bumps just don't affect them. Which is, I guess, kind of just to mention one thing that bothered me about this game. The AI, if you're on the expert difficulty, the AI is fast. Yeah. And the AI races you harder than I think in any other Gran Turismo game I've ever played. Like they are so resistant to giving you any room, and they are so resistant to moving to sort of even if you just pass them, like they have zero awareness. So they will hit you. They will spin you coming out of corners. You have to be really careful to kind of look over your shoulder, look in your mirrors after you pass someone, because chances are they're in the exact same position that they would have been if you weren't there at all. Yeah. And the thing is that, you get punished, obviously, if they hit you, if they take you out, you will spin, you will lose a lot of speed, but they can never be punished for driving like idiots. Like if you... believe me, I've tried to torpedo some of them out of complete frustration. I've tried to just like pump them into the sun, and like
they don't budge.
They don't budge. They are immovable objects, and that's something that feels old school racing game, but not in the best way.
It's pretty funny that, because I always felt as if Gran Turismo was one of the few games where you could absolutely punt somebody off, like, to the moon pretty much if you T-bone them or something. But in this game, it's like, it's as if they immediately hit the brakes and like the fucking centre of gravity just pulls right down and they don't want to budge. And one of the main issues with that is in the mission modes, where don't touch any other cars when you're trying to do these missions, and you pull off an overtake at Scuba or something like that, and the car behind you just plows into the back of you, and that's it. Mission failed. Like, you've overtaken them, but why would they slow down? They're not trying to meet that criteria. So a lot of these missions are especially interesting. There's a few people been talking about one of them being impossible. I don't know if that just means like highly improbable, or it's genuinely like an issue where the cars just plow into you or whatever, but that is something that the AI drivers are a bit interesting, to say the least. I am a huge fan though of the AI drivers being those guys from like the GT World Series and stuff.
That is very cool. Yeah,
I'm a big advocate for how Gran Turismo creates its own racing universe, like through the Group 4s, Group 3s and stuff. And this just further enforces that. Like, there are real race car drivers. We've seen the way that Jeff Coulthard was represented in GT5. But like, GT7 continues that kind of, it's almost like lore of like, these are the legends of this like universe. These guys made their career playing some mode. Who knows what it is, of course. We're never fully introduced to it, but they made their way somehow in Gran Turismo as being great drivers and such. And I love the idea that those are the guys you're aiming against. I think that's really cool. Boomers are probably going to be annoyed that isn't Senna and
right.
Schumacher and stuff you're racing, but I love it, man. Like, it's so funny. Like, I see Gallo, for example, overtaking me on a straightaway, and then like I look at my phone and he's liked that video of me absolutely eating dirt on Nürburgring. Like, he's liked that video and stuff. Like, it's so funny. It's like, I can't escape this guy. He's just making my life.
He's everywhere. I love how
cool.
often they talk about things that have nothing to do with racing. Like, you know, Nicholas Rublar show up will be like, you should visit Chile sometime. It's a great place. The people are so friendly. It's like, I love Gran Turismo. I love this. It makes no sense, but.
And you just know, like, Polyphony, just like, you know what, those are great answers, fire them straight in. Like, there's another guy, it's like, who am I dating? Gran Turismo, of course.
I didn't see that. Oh, that's amazing.
And then, of course, the condescending, have you watched the video demonstration?
Yes.
Messages and licenses.
I love that I hate bromance, but I really don't know what else to call it. Bromance is, I'm sure, too strong a word, but the camaraderie, if you will, between Mikhail Hazal and Takuma Miyazono, because I think they both drove for Subaru in the championships, and in the game, in GT7, they both drive Subarus in races where they're competing against each other in some of the championships, and they'll usually mention each other. Like, oh, we drove for Subaru, I have to, drive my WRX Group 3 better than Mikhail, because, we're both such big Subaru fans, but I want to be the better Subaru driver. Like, stuff like that's great. I just,
I love it.
And that's the type of thing that, like, it's only going to matter to a very select group of people, but it makes a big difference to those people.
Ultimately, this is the platform to learn about these guys, though. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Kaz, PD, get them a section in Brand Central. Do you know what I mean? Have these drivers with their own profiles and stuff. Like, you've got Lewis Hamilton in there. Like, those little bits of information will be great just in terms of sharing who these guys are and what they've achieved. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, the esports side of Gran Turismo is very much... It's not driven by money or anything. It's driven by people who love racing in Gran Turismo and the kind of the prestige of the event, and being like embedded in this game must be so fucking great for those guys. Like, they were in the GT Sport intro, of course, that was added later down the line, and that was brilliant as well. But it must just be such a surreal feeling seeing that those little profile photos and the little bits of the tidbits of information, you get that kind of semblance of their personality, and that is very much a polyphony thing for the 21st century in many ways, in the sense that it's taking those type of gimmicks that they are so good at implementing and just making it so charming. Like, it's fantastic. And listen, we've spent a lot of time talking about parts we're critical of about this game and stuff, but I think between us we've got like 70 hours seat time or something like that.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
a belter of a game. Like there are a lot of minor issues and quirks and stuff, but man, it's good.
I love this game. I mean, I really do. I'm really, really happy with it. There was a moment where I started, like I said, where I was a little bit unsure because I was wondering how much I was actually going to enjoy the driving, which, was a big part of GT Sport for me. But
yeah,
I've put enough time in to know, this for me ranks. I'm really going to have to reassess my like Gran Turismo ranking. And, it's one of those things where like I'm pretty much accepting of the fact that like it's going to be really hard for anything to ever touch like 2 and 4 for me because those are like deep in nostalgia as like my favorite games when I was a kid. But like definitely, I mean, for me, no question, the best one since 4. It's not even close. It's not even close. And then I was something obviously who I've said a lot, like really could not stand 5 and thought 6 was like slightly better, but still not great. Yeah. So it's nice. It's nice to, I think we always have this expectation. I have it a lot with music where a band I really like that has come out with so much amazing work comes out with a new album. And I'm like, but it's never going to be like, it's never going to be like one of their classics. But then something like GT7 happens and it's like, wow, there's something else to add to the mantle there. So I'm very happy with it. And I think it's going to be a great place once they finally get those lobby issues figured out. It's going to be a great place for us to have some GT Thursday type tomfoolery.
I think it says a lot. Like the foundations for which GT7 has to build on is better than anything we've had since 4. So you put that in the context and you're talking about this game in 2-3 years time. What's it even going to look like? This is the thing. Like Polyphony have always supported their games heavily in the kind of online era, and now they have more tools than ever to facilitate that. We're seeing it through the dynamic pricing and the Legend car dealership, little elements like that. The integrated kind of blog system and stuff for learning about what's going on in the game in terms of what to expect in the future, that sort of thing. This is a game that in 2-3 years time will probably far surpass anything in the genre. I'm happy enough to throw that out there. It's a pretty big statement, but ultimately for me, what Polyphony have managed to create has went far beyond my expectations in many ways. Like I've always been pretty vocal about the fact that for Sport 0.5, that way, like we'll get that kind of more full-fledged GT League type stuff in there, but we know what to expect. And in many ways, I commend PD for like pulling the rug out from under me so fucking brutally with the physics changes and stuff, because it's like it made an arse out of me because that wasn't what I was expecting ultimately. And there are loads of things like that I don't expect. The amount of detail in here for a game that I think many people probably agreed was going to be a nice evolution on or iteration, evolution, whatever on Sport. It's something that really stands on its own kind of 2 feet, and we haven't talked about the visuals or graphics that much because the fact is that if you've been online in the past for 4 days or so, you've seen that this is one of the best games, like in terms of visuals, in terms of like the replay visuals and escapes and stuff. It's an absolute masterclass in fidelity. Like it's just unbelievable.
The audio too, Admi Sir, who's like a really big audio nut when it comes to car sounds and stuff in the Discord, is just like regularly talking about how surprised he is that, Gran Turismo stepped up in the audio game. And I don't have the ear for it, but there are times where I'm like, that sounds really good. Again, the soundtrack's not for me. I'm not going to drag this podcast down with that. But in terms of the car audio, high marks all around. Yeah, I mean, just since you touched on the soundtrack, we won't go delve into it because I don't want any pitchforks coming out. You stretch this for another hour. I'm very surprised at the lack of new music in this game, I will say. I get it's the 25th anniversary title. I'm willing to bet I could probably say low 20% for people who associate Gran Turismo with Daiki Kasho and Daiki Kasho alone, as far as those older. If you like Daiki Kasho, like this game is your paradise. If you like, you like everything he's done basically since GT4 and not really before it, it's great. Yeah. But that's like, to put it in a nutshell. The funny thing is, I feel like I express this opinion. People are like, "Oh, you hate you don't like Gran Turismo music. You don't like the jazz." I love that stuff. GT3 and GT4, incredible soundtracks. GT2 is great, but I feel like this game repurposes a lot of music, but it repurposes the wrong music. Like,
Yeah.
there's all the Masahiro Ando songs from GT1, which are represented really well here. There's a lot of GT5 and 6 Daiki Kasho stuff and some of the other songs from those games. But there's nothing from GT3 or 4 or 2. There's no From East to West. There's no Light Velocity. There's no Mr. Four-Wheel Drive. Wind Road that was in GT2 and GT Sport is not in this game. Like, there is a whole chunk of Gran Turismo musical history that isn't here. And unfortunately, it happened to be my favorite chunk. So for that, I can't really give it the pass.
Yeah, and this is the thing, Adam, once again, don't want to get pitchforks out for you, but I know you're not a massive fan or understander of the hype as far as feeder goes as well, but
yes,
I mean,
it's not
going to cost that much to license those guys, surely. I'm pretty sure it's Sony, BMG, or whatever they're called.
What's Feeder doing today? Are they still around?
They still make albums. Yeah, they still make albums every so often, but the point is, like, it couldn't have been that difficult to put these tracks in there, make a music rally stage for it. Maybe they're keeping it for the Seattle Circuit DLC and they'll add that in with the Dodge Viper. But on the soundtrack, man, like I just want to know, is there a specific song that you truly detest in this game? Like whenever it comes on, you're just like,
oh god. So there are a lot of. Here's the thing: there are some Daiki Kasho songs I actually like. Like Soul on Display is kind of overplayed at this point, but when that song came out in that GT5 trailer, I loved it. And there are a couple songs here and there from GT6, like Looking For You and Survive, that I kind of like, but a lot of his stuff I hate. Like a lot of his stuff, like sometimes I think maybe it's the vocalists he partners with are just not good, but a lot of his rock songs I don't like. Now, his work in the GT3 era was amazing because he was just making straight like electronic industrial bangers, and like that's what I'm here for. Like I fucking love Mirage, I love Skyscraper. Those are amazing songs, but the one about oh god, that's the other thing. They're all the lyrics. It's all like anime FMV bullshit. It's like changing your life. Today is a new day. All that. Like, I don't care. I just don't care. So anyway, it's a lot of Daiki Kasho stuff. Also, Entertainer. Why we bring back the Entertainer?
I disagree with you there, mate. Like the Entertainer is here to stay. I'm happy with that.
I loved GT Sport soundtrack. And I've realized now everyone hates GT Sports soundtrack because it's like too weird and spacey. But I like that stuff. That's what I want to hear. Like,
yeah, that's fair. On the subject of the soundtrack songs I detest, man, there's one called Dr. Awesome. And
yes, that one's really bad. That one's like
so shit.
Oh, where are the lyrics of that one? It's like people are having good times or something like that is like the chorus. It's really bad.
Mate, it's one of those ones that come on and I actually cringe, man. Like it's so fucking bad. I can put up with like some of the more kind of cringy anime lyric type stuff, but that song is just one of those ones I'm like, how is this even made? Like it's so bad. It's hard to put in words.
I'm playing it in my headphones now. Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, it's very surface level. Like, this is a rock song. This is an upbeat rock song. And well, somebody in the YouTube comments has tried to get the lyrics down right. So it's like, just singing the song with the wind breeze in your face now, with a smile, your eyes in sunshades, going down to the beach, don't know if you're invited. Just for a while, but the barbecue is out. Make sure they know who's the picture. Like, it's just... Oh, my days. It's one of those songs that come on for me in the Porsche Cup Nürburgring race. And maybe that's why I crashed, because I was just getting more angry as it went on, because I just refuse to believe that those type of songs are genuinely stuff that... It's all subjective, right? But come on, man. Like, that song is so bad, and it's just... That sums up the issue with the soundtrack for me. It's one of these things where I don't think that song exists outside of GT. I sure hope it doesn't. And maybe it's just a case of carrying it over and putting it in. But like, there's a few songs like that in here. Like, this is probably a controversial one for me.
but Soul Surfer does my head in.
Yeah, I don't like Soul Surfer either. I don't like,
Yeah.
and that those two songs are very emblematic of like when Daiki Kasho or whoever tries to make a straight up rock song, it's not good. Like it's just, I don't know. I'm sorry. I listened to like this is gonna make me sound like such a fucking elitist asshole. I don't even want to say it, but it's just like I feel like this is a lot of the rock songs in Gran Turismo that are done by like hired artists for the game are kind of like public domain rock songs.
Yeah.
And they're not I love rock and punk and all that kind of music. I'm into it. And it's just it's not there. It's a level below.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's Dance Dance Revolution music. That's how I'd describe it.
Whereas like and the reason that I say this, and it's coming from a place of like disappointment rather than like full on like anger and this is shit, is because like the jazz music in Gran Turismo isn't like that. The jazz music it's I mean, I'm not a jazz aficionado, but like it's usually always very good. The lounge stuff is fantastic. They take a lot of inspiration from like Cassiopeia and T-Square, and it's very good. And then I don't know, the rock songs just don't do it for me. Yeah. But the other thing too is that they were hyping up how they had like more than 300 songs in this game.
Yeah.
And on an objective level, like, can we be honest? Like, 270 of them are like carryovers.
Yeah.
Or 230 or something. You know, not quite that much. But like, I don't know. I thought that if they were really putting their foot forward with the music thing, that they're really going to push that they would have more new music. But there isn't a lot of new music in this game.
Yeah, it's even the way you've got like the Gran Turismo 7 official album as well. Like you see that coming out prior to release, and you're like, oh well, they have taken a serious focus. But even that album, it's like 7 new songs. Like
that's it. Yeah, there's not a lot there.
You could have included like the title songs from the EU and NA versions of previous Gran Turismo games in there and stuff as well. Yeah, there's a few things they could have done on the music front, and from a gameplay perspective as well, by the way, the constant changing of music between menu items, like, wow, what is going on?
It's annoying. I don't know why every single menu or location in the game needs to have its own like collection of songs. Like, can't the song that's playing in the world map play when I'm in Brand Central? Does it really need to? Because the thing is, you're not always in those menus for more than like a second at a time. Yeah. So it just like nothing persists, and I don't like that. Like, you know, maybe make an exception for like GT Auto, because Gran Turismo's always done that.
Yeah,
but like,
yeah, of course.
For the most part, like it just things switch like way too fast. Because a lot of the time I'm popping like in and out of these menus, and it just adds friction to the game when the song keeps changing.
Yeah, I think this is also in part due to the PS5 loading times being insane. So I think it's like that just amplifies it further. But yeah, once again, very small issues that can be fixed. But there's times where like, I think Nightbirds only ever plays when you're in the tuning menu, and I fucking love that song. So it's like I'll leave the game in the tuning menu for a bit.
Yeah.
But like when you're going about your regular gameplay, it's just constant music track changes, and I think that's a very kind of Japanese game dev type thing. Like when you think of RPGs and stuff, I think back to like Pokemon and stuff, where you go in the Pokemon Center, different tune, Pokemon Mart, different tune.
Yeah,
I think it's the same idea going on here, but with those loading times, man, it just you never quite get to enjoy the music enough. I feel like you're saying, GT Auto, fine, Brand Central, we want to have that kind of premium feel, play whatever tracks are necessary in there. But there's a few menus where you're like, you could just continue playing the same overworld menu track, or even resume it once you come back out of GT Auto and stuff as well. But the sound design is absolutely on point and fantastic. That's just a tiny little gripe that I think
I like that we still had time to talk about the soundtrack and get me to, you know, fucking lose my cool over it. I also like that you also share in my hatred of Dr. Awesome. I remember I was trying to find the name of that song because I was like, is it called? It's probably called Good Times, because that's like the one lyric I can hear in it. Right. And then when I saw Dr. Awesome, I played that. I'm like, oh my god, this. Of course, the song is called Dr. Awesome.
Exactly. Nobody can say with a straight face that. Like, can you imagine you're at a party and you're like, mate, could you play Dr. Awesome? Can you imagine saying that? Like, it's such a bad song, man. And listen, music's subjective. Dr. Awesome is not. And I know we just got us all cancelled, probably some contingent of GT
I think
fans.
that there were a lot of Gran Turismo fans that were enjoying this podcast up until about 5 minutes ago, and now they want to kill us. So that's fine.
But yeah. So I mean, it's been a longer podcast than normal up until this point for a good reason. Because
yes,
the truth of the matter is, right, I watched many reviews of this game. I read your fantastic one on Jalopnik as well, Adam, which is now live and people can read.
Thank you. A week late for good reasons, but appreciate
it.
And
it's funny because you watched like a 5-10 minute review of Gran Turismo, and you do not envy the people reviewing these games at all. Because I still feel like after all this time and then this time discussing it, there are still so many elements that you could probably talk at great length about. Like, how many reviewers do you think even found out about the engine swaps, for example? Or how many people found out about like how the invitation system is kind of linked to the roulette wheel and stuff? There's probably a lot of stuff that goes missing because the game is kind of about exploration to a certain extent. So,
and that's why, like, I understand, you know, it's easy to rag on the people who are just like, it's like The Sims, but with cars, and you go from menu to menu. And like, you know, I always feel like if you can't sort of at least appreciate what the game is trying to do, then maybe, you know, if you go into it with the mindset of you're gonna hate it and it's not for you, then maybe you shouldn't be reviewing that game. But like, I can also understand, like, it's huge, and like, reviewers don't have a lot of time to get through this shit. You know, fortunately they got this one to us pretty early as far as I've you know, experienced with getting some like pre-release codes. Like, we had this game like a week, a little bit more than that in advance. But a lot of cases, like, you know, to a little bit of like behind the curtain stuff, like, when Codemasters sends F1 codes, they usually do it like really late, like 2 days before the game comes out, and I want to like pull my hair out because there's no way that I could possibly have anything useful to say about the game if I've only played it for like 4 hours. But yeah, it's tough with a game like GT7. It's really big and there's a lot. So, you know, I always kind of lose it because as I'm writing, because I'm always worried I'm going to miss something that's really important. I'm sure I missed a bunch of things that are super important, but it is how it is.
I think that's the most important thing about this game for me in terms of its impact. I have never seen like such fluid and constant discussion about a single game since we've had that Discord, and everybody, like across 20 different users or however many, can all add a little bit of individual insight about what they're doing at any given point, and it probably isn't really related to what other people are doing. So like, everybody has that specific niche they like Gran Turismo for, and they can talk towards it and bring it up in discussion. And the game is so big that it means that for somebody that'll be a learning point, and I think that's the really cool thing about the game overall. We often say games are a platform, right, when they first launch, if they're online facing especially, like your Overwatches, that sort of thing. But those are like 4 maps, 8 characters, whatever. Gran Turismo 7 is 424 cars or whatever, 15 tracks, many different layouts, many different online modes of varying quality, and many other mission modes, licenses, that sort of thing. You've got the Pokédex type car collecting. There's just so many different avenues that they can expand this game on, and naturally that means some will get more attention than others. That's the thing, you've got to set that expectation that some areas will be expanded on, some might stay relatively the same. But at the end of the day, like, it is a true platform for car enthusiasts and people who just long for that old school racing game type of experience that just doesn't really exist that much anymore. And like I was saying earlier, there is that kind of clamour to try and say about how the economy might be getting twisted by microtransactions and stuff, but these have been here since GT5. Like, it's not something that Polyphony's just dabbling into. They've always put this stuff in place and nobody ever uses it from what I can see. So at the end of the day, like, I feel as if it's a genuine design philosophy to make the game the way it is. Few questionable decisions in there, of course, like not being able to sell cars. But generally speaking, this is an experience in line with what you wouldn't expect to see from a racing game in 2022.
Yeah. There's a real schoolyard moment with this game. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, remember when you were a kid, kind of before the internet, and like there was like a Zelda game or something like that, and everybody was talking about like what they did to get past this level or this boss.
Yeah.
Everybody had a different story to tell. Everyone had a different road to get where they got to help each other. And I don't really see that with any racing game anymore, but I feel it a lot with GT7. And I think part of that is because it is naturally a weird game with lots of weird secrets and things to share. You know, if you happen to get that Chevy small block V8 and you got in the roulette wheel and then you put it in like a Miata, I'm gonna ask you like, how does that drive? Like, I want to fucking know, because that's not something you can buy normally, and like that's cool. Or like if you're a new player, like I think that's part of it too. The other side is this game is so geared towards educating people that naturally people who learn something want to talk about what they learned, and I'm actually surprised. I really thought that people who weren't as familiar with Gran Turismo or cars, if they tried to play GT7, I thought they were just going to be put off by how slow it is. Progression-wise, I thought that they were going to be really annoyed by all of like the dialogue boxes and all that. And I'm seeing that a little bit, but not nearly to the extent that I thought I did. Like, people genuinely seem to like to learn about cars, which is a gratifying thing to say as someone who's loved cars, you know, our whole lives. It's a good time to be a fan, and you know the game's only gonna get better from here. So at this point, I just look forward to those lobbies getting fixed up so we can go racing again and shouting at each other, because that always seems to happen for some reason.
I mean, we're near enough getting to the point we need to put official statement letters on the Twitter account. These GT Thursdays are going a bit crazy. Maybe we need to balance those out now with some bring what you've got sessions. No, I mean, I got an FK engine, Civic engine yesterday. I put it in my EK Civic, and I'm just like, I want to drive this everywhere, but I've nowhere to drive it to because it's not really that fast and it's not really that great handling. But I just love to like hoon it about online with some people. So, you know what I mean? That's the cool thing about GT7 as well. I think it's going to bring back that kind of more freeform level of multiplayer that perhaps sport didn't encourage as much. I think that there's potential for some good fun there, just cruising around trial mounting and making fake like multi-class races and that type of thing. One of the things me and my pals used to always do on GT5 was like cops and robbers lobbies. So you'd have like somebody in a supercar, have everybody else in the pace cars. You got to try and destroy it. Obviously the damage isn't mechanical in this game, I don't think, so you probably couldn't do it. But I love daft shit like that sometimes. It helps break the monotony, and I'm sure if it stops us going to the Nürburgring, you'll be happy about that as well, Adam.
I won't mind that. Yeah, one place you will never see me in the Nürburgring meeting room in Gran Turismo 7. I love the Nürburgring a lot. I think it's a really cool place. I just don't think it's a place that anyone should race in a video game online. That's my opinion. Leave that to the professionals in the 24-hour race.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. Fair.
But I think that's just gonna about wrap it up for this episode. I'm really happy. I think we covered a lot. I think this has been a really fun chat about GT7, and I think it's a predecessor for a lot of future chats that we're gonna have around this game. Maybe when they start updating things and things start changing. So I look forward to it. And everyone who's been playing the game, a lot of you I imagine listening may already be aware of our Discord, but if you're not, go to Twitter, time_extend is our handle, and just DM us if you want an invite to our Discord, where a lot of people are talking about this game. If you are starved for, a community, a sort of close-knit community that you can maybe actually follow with people you'll get to know, and you want to talk about Gran Turismo 7 with them, there. As far as I know, there's no better place. So please come join us.
Yeah, absolutely. Can only echo those statements. Very welcoming community. We have some interesting things going on. Like, for example, when Embargo broke, Andy Hamilton did actually come into the server and answered some NDA-friendly questions and stuff about the game. So we had like a kind of live Q&A thing going on there. We have had kind of community nights on Grid Legends and stuff as well, some of the developers, that sort of thing. So, and amongst the general kind of homely chats and shit posting, there's also a good amount of pretty decent little events and kind of discussions that go on in there as well. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough. It's a great place to be, even if we're a bit biased in saying that.
Yeah, well, they're listening to a show. They know what to expect. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and enjoy GT7.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening.